Come be a part of Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics with your host, Dr. Ed Holliday. Hear the voices of liberty speaking all across America. Doc Holliday provides thought-provoking interviews and commentary about the issues and actions that are afflicting this country and what we need to do to get America back on track. Get fired up, get inspired, get on board with Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics right now.
And here we go.
And once again, that is the sound of rock cracking. You've got Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics right here on webtalkradio.net. That's webtalkradio.net. I'm your host, Dr. Ed Holliday, and we are glad to have you here listening to Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics. This week, I got to ask the question, is China on the brink of woe? Woe is me? Is that China? This superpower that is threatening the United States to be the number one country. The 21st century is China's century, what we've been hearing and watching and seeing. Well, we got some interesting comments on that, and there's some things that we're going to show you too, an article that's come out, and we just want to think. This is not a way I've been thinking, but I want to give you some information that explores this question, is China on the brink of woe? Woe as W-O-E, woe. And it may woe China, and it may be dangerous to the United States. How would that be dangerous if China was to simply implode? Well, there's a lot of things that are in that statement. So we're going to cover that in today's show. This is something that you're not hearing on the mainstream media, that's for sure. So I'm glad you're listening to Doc Holliday's Rock Splitting Politics. We're going to get right into China as soon as I play a little clip from Senator Ted Cruz about what's going on the southern border of the United States. Go back in the archives, listen to her show a couple weeks ago about the incredible just disappearance of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden for their constitutional duties on the southern border of the United States of America. They took an oath of office to protect the Constitution, and they are breaking a law every day in every way when it comes to immigration on the southern border of the United States of America. Our president and vice president are breaking a law, looking at just putting their head in the sand, and it's becoming a crisis. So here, we did a show on a couple of weeks ago. If you didn't hear it, go back and listen to that in the archives. But take a listen to this from Senator Ted Cruz as the Republicans came together. The Senate Republicans said, we need, they had a press conference and said, we need some action from our commander-in-chief, the President of the United States. And maybe Kamala Harris, is she helping him at all? Does she have any kind of ideas? Does she have any kind of intelligence to say, hey, we could do something about this immigration disaster on our southern border? Well, here's Senator Cruz. Take a listen.
The Biden border crisis that continues to rage on the southern border. This is a crisis that on the merits should dominate the news each and every day because it continues to get worse. The Washington Times reported on Sunday that catch and release numbers increased more than 430,000% this August compared to last August. 430,000%. That's a percentage so big you almost think it's a typo. The Biden Department of Homeland Security is preparing for up to 400,000 illegal immigrants to cross the border this month. We are seeing tens of thousands of Haitian immigrants. I was in Del Rio just a couple of weeks ago at the Del Rio Bridge. The day I was there were 10,503 illegal immigrants under that bridge, overwhelming DHS's capacity to deal with them. Just over a week ago, I met with the foreign minister of Panama. She described how this year the country of Panama sits on the juncture between South America and North America. This year they have seen over 80,000 Haitians who had been living in South America crossing into Panama illegally on their way to the United States. And the cause of all of this is simple. It is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris who refuse to enforce the law. Those are decisions they made literally the first day in office. 3 decisions drove this crisis: immediately halting construction of the border wall, that happened on day 1, reinstituting the failed policy of catch and release, that also happened on day 1, and most indefensibly, ending the incredibly successful Remain in Mexico international agreement. Remain in Mexico last year produced the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. This year, because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris refused to enforce the law, have continued to be utterly lawless, we are seeing the highest rate of illegal immigration in 21 years.
Well, thank you, Senator Cruz. Thank you for the Republicans in the Senate who are saying, look, let's get some action before this crisis gets worse and worse. Actually, it is descending into chaos because there is no policy. There is no policy. And like you heard Senator Cruz say, what President Trump had done, it worked beautifully and better policy, and it wasn't easy to put in place. But they got it in place, and it had stopped the flow of illegal immigration on the United States southern border. So I hope our president and vice president will wake up to their responsibilities. They have failed miserably. President Biden is, we're going to talk about him coming up about China. Let's talk about China. Is China on the brink of woe? Well, I'll tell you what I've learned over the last few years, and I've even looked in investing in China for different stocks, different things to look at, and over the years, yes, I've seen some things, and some companies have really grown, and it looked like a good investment opportunity, but it hasn't been lately if you've watched the stock market and what's going on in China. But what we saw with China is incredible as the world's largest country, India, back and forth to China, but well over 1 billion people. And the thing about China is since the communists took over and Chairman Mao was there, and they did some incredibly stupid things and killed tens of millions of people. But what has happened since the 70s, 80s, and part of it may be beginning with Nixon going to China. If you go back in history and read about that, how he opened the door to China. But I do have to tell you that China had some incredible moves economically and under different leadership over the decades from the 80s and 90s. And with the help of the United States and European powers, China has really become a huge dominant economy. When I say dominant for that region. They have not taken over America in the amount of GDP and gross domestic product, but they are definitely growing. And they look like this is their century. Who can stop 1 billion people on their way to being an economic giant and a superpower to rival the United States of America. And some people say it will be stronger than the United States of America, but more superior military. We know they got the numbers. So what is going on that makes them look so gigantic? And people say, let's do what China's doing. Well, we know they got a communist government, so people don't have freedom. We remember what happened at Tiananmen Square in 1989, and there was this move of young people wanting democracy. It was squashed, and many people died. And the communists, it took them years to get that out of people's minds. And right now, what they started doing is moving people from the countryside into the cities. They didn't have enough room in cities. What did they do? They built whole new cities. They go out to a pasture land, and they get their plans, and they've done this all over China, where they put in the sewage, and they put in when nobody's living there, And then they built a whole city, and they have moved people in. And it's made an incredible rate of modernization. And they've got a very poor country that became more of a middle-class country. And the income level has increased for what it was 2 or 3 decades ago tremendously. And so the citizens seem to be happy with that part. But when we saw, just like the Wuhan virus, when they say don't leave your house, they mean it. You remember we talked about that on our show in the past, where they locked the apartments down where the people live. I mean, they locked them in. They weren't going to leave that apartment because the authorities locked them in. Dictatorship of the Communist Party that overrules everything that goes on. How do you know what's going on? Well, the communist government, they're going to do what's good for communism and for the Communist Party, and not necessarily for the people. But that's part of how they can move quick and say, we're going to build a city here. We're going to take this land and we're going to build a city. But it's been incredible. People who've studied the stock markets and looked at China, say, look at the growth, invested there. We know a lot of factories, a lot of jobs moved out of America, moved into China. And we know that China is very good at duplicating, copying, stealing, is the real word, American know-how when it comes to building things. And if you want to build your products in China, the Chinese make you give up some of your company's secrets so that they'll understand. But then they start making copies of it. Everything from the furniture business, tire business, computer business, chip business, phone business, everything. If they can get a way to steal it, and they have spies all over the United States. That's what President Trump uncovered, all these Confucius, which is really confusion. The word slipped out of my mouth, but that's really what it is. They're confusing the Americans and the American government with these Confucius education centers on college campuses. Has really been nothing more than intelligence and spying and getting information from private companies and even military secrets probably. But that has been ongoing, and that's what's made China so successful and strong. And you look at products coming from China and they're knockoffs. But I'm just saying that's how China has grown so much. And their people have gone from a low-income third world nation into a middle-income nation in many places. So why would we say that China is on the brink of woe? Because, they're incredibly successful, and everybody's looking and saying, hey, this is the century of China. They're showing their muscle in the China South Sea. People in Taiwan are, and for those who don't know, during the big war, it became like a civil war. The communist won, Chairman Mao. Those who were fighting for a free China, they moved to, they went to the island off the coast of China called Taiwan. And now China claims that's their people and their island. But Taiwan has worked under freedom for decades now. That is a point of contention. Same way with Hong Kong. Hong Kong had a lease for 100 years from the British, from Great Britain, and they gave it up in 1997. But it was to remain free. And just this past year, China took over and said, no, we're not going to do this freedom stuff anymore. And they did. They just shut down the free elections, shut down a lot of things in Hong Kong that had been able to be more free and very successful economically. It was before, because it was never a part of China during the communist takeover, because Great Britain Hong Kong was controlled by Great Britain until 1997. So these are the things that China has going for it. But there are some cracks in the wall, and that's what you need to know about. Have you ever heard of a company called Evergrande? Well, it's a Chinese real estate company that owes tens of billions of dollars, and they can't make the payments on what they've borrowed.